Hey, everybody. So this week we are going to embark on parametric window making. So thus far on our eccentric collector project, we have created a conceptual mass. We've taken that mass and made architecture from it. So walls, floors, roofs, curtain walls, potentially. And then we've created a structural system for that eccentric collector project. And now we're going to make parametric windows, so punched openings. How do we make these custom windows, and how do we get them to look how we want and have the design that we want? And how do we have control over them in the project? So take this window, for example, that I have modeled up here in SketchUp. How could I make a window like this? Okay, so there's no one-offs in Revit that would work for this. So how do I make my own? And then how do I have control over it? So for example, how do I have control over where exactly this mullion is placed, where this mullion is placed? Can I have control over that within the project so that I can put all the windows in, and then I can go through and sort of tweak the position of this mullion and this mullion? Likewise, maybe could I also control the thickness of the sill down here? Maybe I could control how thick it is and how far out it goes on either side. So we just want to be able to have some kind of fine tuning control, and we can build that right into our window files, and then we can bring those into the project. So how do we go about making one of those? So this is the one we'll make. So we'll start with this. But first, let's just start a new family, a new window family, and then let me just explain the sort of environment that you're given. So I'm going to go to new family, and Revit always asks, what is it that you'd like to build? And I'm going to go all the way to the right, and I'm going to just choose window, not the other two windows, just plain old window, and hit open. So here we go. So right away, it opens actually a series of windows. No pun intended, a series of tabs. Okay. The first one here is the reference level. So they call it ref level because it's saying, hey, here's the floor plan view of, say, any particular level in your project. What you're seeing here is a generic wall with a generic opening. So we're going to design our window to fit in here. And so it really doesn't matter what this window is, okay, or what this wall is, because it all depends on what the construction of the wall is in your actual project. So we just have this generic wall, and right away we see these kind of notes on here. Now, the first thing I'm going to do when I get into this file is just change the scale to 1 1/2 inch equals 1 foot. That will shrink down these notes a bit so we can have a little more space on our drawing. Okay, so what am I looking at here? Like I said before, generic wall with a cut with a width of 3 feet. This is the interior of our building. This is the exterior. That's important if you have things happening. You switch back to this model. If you have things happening out here that are different from in here. In this case, not much, but perhaps I could build that into the model itself, into the parametric model itself. Okay, let's go through the rest of the views here. We have an exterior elevation. I'll explain all these dashed green lines in a moment. And we have an interior elevation. So they basically look the same. Now I'm just going to change the scale on both of these views just so we have consistency between them. And then of course we have a 3D view. So here's our generic wall. Do a perspective view on this. Here's our generic wall. And here's our opening. Okay, so let's start with reference level. Okay, aside from some of these notes, we have all this other stuff in here. So let's take a look at them. So we have a reference plane on the left edge of the rough opening, a plane on the right edge, one in the middle directly between those two, one in the middle here, directly in the middle of the wall. And that's it for this view. we have one parameter already set, which is defining the width of the rough opening. So this is already built into the parametric window family starting file. So we have this parameter set. That means when I'm in the project, I can say, hey, I want the opening to be 2 feet. I want the opening to be 10 feet. I want it to be huge, whatever the case may be. If I go to, let's go to interior view. We have a couple other reference planes. First is the top of the window itself, the rough opening, the sill, the bottom of the window itself, and also a reference plane that lives on the level that this window lives. So that might be level 1, might be level 2 or 3, depending on your project. So in order to draw anything, to create any sort of window, we have to work with these reference planes. The reference planes dictate the geometry. So everything starts from the reference planes and then the geometry gets created from them. So we have to understand reference planes and how they work. So let's look at this window and let's build it together. Okay, so let's just break this down into pieces. The first piece I want to make is this sill frame here. Now, there's a couple ways we could draw it. One way we could draw it is I'm going to draw, say, line work on the sill reference plane and then extrude it up some height. So I can make the height of the box that I draw down here a parameter. I could say, hey, make it this high. Now, there's some other interesting parameters that you could add here. How far out does the sill come on the interior? How far out does the sill go out on the exterior? Those would be 2 good ones to add as well. So let's add those. So what I'm going to do is make a reference plane that lives on this face. Okay, right now it's flush with the wall, but we could have it wherever we want. And I want a reference plane that's flush with the frame here to define the actual depth of the depth of the actual sill frame. And then I want to do another reference plane that is flush with this plane to define the height. Okay, so I could make a shape on the sill reference plane, extrude it up, or I can make a shape on the left reference plane and extrude it to the right. I think for this one, I'm going to do the left side and extrude it to the right. Okay. And as I work through this, you'll sort of see how this is done. Okay. So first things first, let's go to our reference level plan. Okay. Now I want to add 2 reference planes, one out here and one out here to define how deep the actual sill framing is. So I'm going to go up to create and I'm going to go to datum panel and select reference plane. Okay, I'm just going to put one here. I don't care where it is. And I'm going to put one here and I'm going to maybe just line them up at least. Okay. So I have 2 reference planes out here. Now, since I know this is exterior, I'm going to call this EXT sill face. I'll call this INT sill. Okay. Now, these are just floating in space. These don't know where to be yet because they're not tied to any reference plane that was given to us in the project. So in order to do that, we have to add a dimension string and then turn that dimension string into a parameter. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go up to create. I'm not going to go to create. I'm going to go to annotate and I'm going to pick aligned. And I'm going to say, hey, I want a dimension from the center of the wall to the interior sill face. Okay. And I'm going to click out in space. So there's that one. And now I want one from the center of the wall to the exterior sill face. And there's that one. Okay. They don't need to be lined up. I'll just move this one over. Okay, so we have two dimensions and they're different. So let's turn this one into a parameter, meaning we can control it in the project. We don't have to come to the family file to change it and then go back into the project. So I'm going to click the 7 inches and I'm going to go up to this area. It says label dimension. And what I want to do is click this button right here. It says create parameter. I mean, talk about non-intuitive. There's this random little area they're calling labels, not parameters. And there's this random button on the right hand that says create parameter. Like that should be bigger. Okay, I digress. I'm going to click that, create parameter. Let's give this parameter a name. INT frame depth. Let's say INT sill frame depth. I'm going to keep this on type. Okay. And what that means is, do you remember when we would go into certain projects, we'd say have a wall, for example. And if I want to change that wall everywhere in my project, I would go to edit type, right? And then I can change it. And I can change some parameter on it. That's the same thing here. Instance is I could click on a wall and instead of going into edit type, I can just go into the properties palette and I can make some change to that particular instance. But I just want to stay with type for now. And you'll understand this as we go forward. Interior sill frame depth looks good. I'm going to hit OK. Okay, I'm going to click out in space. So this has been defined now. So I'm going to go to this one and I'll say make parameter and I'll call it ext sill. Keep it on type, hit OK. All right, so we have two parameters in there. Now I can always test these parameters by going to this button right here. Okay, family type. So if I click that guy, okay, now exterior sill frame depth, here's that current dimension. Here's the current dimension for that one. Now I could go in here and just put in 7 inches, hit apply, and that moves. And I could go in here and I could put 3 inches and hit apply, and that moves. And it basically went flush with the exterior of the wall there. So just to make it different, I'll put in 4 inches and hit apply. There, it pokes out a little bit. So we can play with them here. Okay, so I'm fine with where it is. So what's nice about this button here called family types right here is that I can add some geometry into my window and then I can go in here and test it. If it doesn't work in here, it's not going to work in the project. Okay, so right now we have a reference plane on the bottom of the sill and we have 2 reference planes out here. Now I just need a reference plane like up here to define the height of that frame. Now this sill is a pretty complicated one, but the other ones won't be as complicated in theory. But so this, and I'm going a little slow. So bear with me. I know this is kind of complicated. So now I'm going to go to create reference plane and I'll put one right here. I don't care where it is. And I'm just going to call this sill height. Okay, I'm going to go ahead up to annotate, go to aligned, and I'm going to make a dimension string from the bottom of the sill to the top of the sill. Okay. And now I'll grab that dimension and do what I did before and make it a parameter. Okay, and I'll call this one sill height. Keep it as a type instance, that's fine. Okay, now it's time to draw some geometry. So like I said before, okay, I am going to draw it from the left-hand side and extrude it all the way across, or I can draw it from the bottom and extrude it up. Let's try it from the left. Okay, so I'm going to go to my left elevation. Okay, here it is. Now, this is a kind of a nice view because I can really see all my, here's the bottom of the sill. Here's the exterior sill face, interior sill face, and height. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go to create an extrusion right here. I'm going to click extrusion. And now before I do anything, I'm going to set the work plane to the left side. Go here and pick left. Hit OK. Okay. Now I'm going to draw a rectangle over all my areas here. I'm going to go from upper corner to bottom right. Now, after I draw it, I get these lock symbols. Okay. This is saying, hey, do you want to lock this line to this reference plane? Yes. Do you want to lock this line to this reference plane? Yes. Yeah, I had to kind of look for that one. Do you want to lock this line to this reference plane? Yes. And then this one to this one? Yes. Okay. So now I'm just going to hit the green check right now. Okay. Something was drawn. I don't exactly know what. I'm going to go to my view one and take a look. Okay. This is fine. I made an extrusion. It's going the wrong way, but that's fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my exterior view. I'm going to grab this extrusion handle over here and drag it all the way to the right side and lock it to there. Okay. Let's go to view one, 3D view. Here is the bottom frame that we've created. Now let's test the parameters that we just set. Now, if you remember, I should be able to move the face of this extrusion in or out, the back face in or out, and the height up or down. So I'm going to go up to my family types here, and I'm going to play with this. So sill height, let's do 4 inches and hit apply. Okay, that worked. Let's try 1 foot. Hit apply. Big sill, getting ugly quick. All right, I'm going to put it down to 2 inches. Close that. And then I'm going to play with my exterior sill frame depth. I'll do 8 inches. Now the back should move out an inch. And for my interior sill frame depth, I'll put 8 inches. And the front should move out. There we go. Everything seems to be working with that piece. So we're done with that piece. The only thing I might do is grab that piece, change its material, or change its identity category to frame mullion and hit apply. Now that identity category would be good for, say, quantifying how many elements that we need, towards the end of the project when we're actually building it. Not super crucial here, but material for sure. You might want to add some cool material in there. And you might want to just play with your graphic display options so you can see how things look. You know me. Let's see here. Okay, so everything is sort of some default material for me. All right, so there's our bottom frame. I think I'll keep it on hidden line for now just so we can see things. Okay, so we have that frame set. Now, I've made this. Let's do the left and right. So in order to do that, I already have a reference plane on the top of the sill face or the bottom of this frame. I have a reference plane on the left-hand side, so I don't need that one. I have a reference plane on the top defining the height. So here's what I want to do. I want to be able to define how deep this frame is. So maybe from the center of the wall, I want to come out 2 inches on the exterior and go back 3 inches on the interior. So I'm going to need a reference plane here and a reference plane on the other back edge. I'm also going to need a reference plane here to define the thickness of this piece. Okay, so let's go to our window and let's add the left-hand piece. Okay, so I'm going to switch this back to orthographic. I just don't like how it rotates around. Okay, so I want to add that piece over here. So I'm going to go to the reference level page tab. I think I'm going to switch my scale to 3 inches equals a foot so these can shrink a little more and I don't get lost. Here's that geometry we have already made. All right, so like I said, I'm going to need a reference plane here. And I'm going to need a reference plane here and here. Now, I can use this reference plane and this reference plane for this side too. So I'm just going to drag those over. So these will define my left and right frames, depths and whatnot. But I'm going to need another one of these. Create reference plane over here. Okay. So I can kind of see the shape of the frame here. I can see the shape of the frame here. So let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and name this one left frame thickness, right frame. Let's call this one left frame ext depth. Or no, let's just call this side frame ext depth because we don't need to differentiate between left and right for this one. And let's call this one side frame int depth, interior depth. Okay, let's add our parameters. So I'm going to go up to annotate and I'm going to go to aligned and I'm going to click here and here for my interior frame depth. I'm going to just put that over here. And I'm going to go here and here for my exterior frame depth. I'll put that here. Now, I'm going to grab this and I'm going to say make parameter and I'll call it int frame depth. Now, if I wanted this to have the same parameter, I can just select this dimension string and go to my labels and pick it. Okay, interior frame depth. Now that name doesn't really make sense, but that's okay. I can just go into here and make a new one. I'll call it ext frame depth. Now I'll make one the same just to show you what I mean. Okay, so we have two parameters, one for the exterior, one for the interior. Now let's make a parameter from this reference plane to this reference plane defining the thickness of this frame. And we'll repeat that parameter over here. So I'm going to go to annotate aligned. I'm going to grab the left reference plane and go to this left frame thickness reference plane. Ugh, okay. I'll make that a parameter and I'll call it frame. I'll call it left, right, frame thickness. And now I'm going to make another dimension string over here to here. And I am just going to select that dimension string. Instead of making a new parameter, I'm just going to select left, right frame thickness. So whenever I change that parameter, both sides are affected. Okay, so let's draw our extrusion, but let's draw it from the sill level and we'll have it go up. Okay, so I'm going to do that from this view. So I'm going to go to create extrusion. I'm going to set the reference plane to sill. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to make a rectangle from here to here. Okay, and I'm going to hit all of my locks. And I'm going to stay in the same extrusion. And I'm going to make another one right here. So I can make multiple extrusions and I will lock this one as well. Okay, these locks always appear in weird places, but just got to look around for those locks. Okay, and then I'm going to hit OK. So it looks like I've made 2 extrusions. I don't really know where they are vertically, so I'm going to go to my exterior. Here they are. I'm just going to grab the top sort of handle here and go all the way up and lock it to the top. And the bottom looks like it's going through my sill, so I want it to go right to there, and I'll lock it there. Okay, so I've made the side frames now. Now let's go to my exterior view here, or my 3D view, and take a look. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now I can select this and change this to frame mullion, hit apply. Now you could have made those separately too. You don't have to make them together like I did, but I just did that for ease. Likewise, I could have made my top mullion and my bottom mullion at the sill mullion at the same time by making an extrusion on the left hand reference plane and extruding it to the right. Could have done them both at the same time. So let's play with some parameters and make sure we have the control we want over this. So I'm going to go ahead and hit family type parameters. Okay, so exterior frame depth. Let's change this to 8 inches. Okay, see how the back went out? Interior frame depth, 8 inches. And the front came out. Okay, so I'm going to do exterior frame depth to 2 inches, interior frame depth to 2 inches, which would give me a total of a 4-inch frame in the middle. Let's change our left-right frame thickness to 4. And they got thicker. Okay, so I'm going to change that to 1 inch. Here's another thing I'm going to change. I'm going to change the width here to 2 feet. Nice skinnier window. And let's see, sill height. No. Rough width. Default sill height. Let's do 2 feet. So it should move down on the wall. And we can change our height to 6 feet. So it's a long, skinny window. There we go. So there, everything is working exactly how I wanted to. Now, okay. So I've got the bottom sill in. I've got the left sill and the right sill. I'm going to stop the video here and then I'll come back and we'll make the top sill, or sorry, the top frame, the middle frame, and this frame here. All right, I'll be back.